Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hey, what's up, everyone? You've tuned in to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline. We got a lot to talk about this episode around the league. There's been some great players retiring. There's been some basketball camp upset craziness with Steph Curry. There's also been a lot of things happening in the summer league this past week. So we got a lot to talk about this podcast. We'll be right back. I'm your host, Pauline, and this is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline, and let's get it started. It's been an exciting few weeks in basketball. It seems like it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but there's still a lot going on around the league. There's a lot going on in women's basketball and summer league also. So there's still a lot going on, even though it's been kind of a slow week. Last week was really exciting in the basketball world because we started summer league. Kevin Durant switched over to the Golden State Warriors, and then there was also a lot of talk. We discussed super teams are and what, I enjoy them, I like them, so, and I don't have a problem with them. So we talked a little bit about that. And in big news this week, I think in some of the biggest news, it's been given a little inkling that it could have happened. I was hoping that it would happen after this next season, but Tim Duncan has announced that he is going to retire. He did always say that he didn't want a farewell tour. He kind of just wanted to end when he felt that it was time. And these last few weeks, about a week or two, it's been kind of just around the league that he was considering retiring and that they were discussing that with him before he made his announcement. So there's been, like I said, a little bit of an inkling that he may be retiring that this past season was his last season after 19 years in the league. Like I said, so he played 19 years in the league. He's been with the Spurs. And if you know anything about basketball, he has been a very dominant and consistent fixture in the league throughout his time in the NBA. Ever since he was drafted, he's continually been a consistent player, a dominant player. He has never disappointed, I don't think, ever. Growing up, I was always a little bit bigger than everybody else. I've been 5'8" ever since the 8th grade, so I've always been really tall. And growing up playing basketball, I was always a power forward or a center, and I remember watching him and wanting to emulate him. He's known as Mr. Fundamental for a reason, and I think that goes to show why he's been so consistent with everything is because he stuck to the basics. Nowadays, people are saying that basketball is just too flashy, that people are trying to put on more of a show as far as like tricks are concerned. Growing up, Tim Duncan was always somebody that I had admired and wanted to emulate. I loved his style of the game because, and I don't agree with when people say he's like a gentle giant, because he's been killing people on the floor ever since he started. So I don't think that's what a gentle giant does. I mean, he might be more of like a silent assassin than a gentle giant, because he's always been, like I said, a dominant player, and he's been respected by a lot of the great players that we deem to be some of the greatest. Kobe also has a lot of respect for him. Watching him, he's just always been somebody that would never fail you. And it goes to show, I think also that his character as well, his coach Pop announced, did his kind of like goodbye to him. He was really upset about that. You could see he was getting really emotional, not upset as far as like mad in his decision, upset in the fact that it's a closing of an era now. And with Tim Duncan retiring, Kobe retiring, it really is the close to the chapter in the NBA that we've become familiar with. A lot of these great talents that we've had these last, 20 years are starting to retire now, and the game is changing. And it's really odd to me now that a lot of guys playing are younger than me. It's really weird. When you're growing up, you have all these players that you're looking up to. You have all these posters that you keep on your wall. And it's just really funny that now a lot of the guys, Ingram, Ben, all those guys are younger than me. And it's kind of weird. The NBA is changing, and now a lot of these older players are retiring. There still is a lot of players that I grew up watching still in the game. Vince Carter, he is just keeping going. But, Tim Duncan, it has been decided that the Spurs will waive him. So what's going to happen is now, if everything gets clear, there's a lot of other steps that have to go in with his contract and everything, but he could potentially be getting paid for his last year of his contract. So this next season, he could still be getting paid for that, even though he will not essentially be playing. So that'll be kind of nice. I think it would just be a nice ending for him and that organization, kind of like a goodbye thing. I don't think that anybody else would deserve that. And that franchise and him, I know, have a really good relationship, so I don't see why that would not happen for him. I like I said, I'm sad that he's not going to round it out at 20 years. I kind of have a thing where it bothers me when things end on an odd number, but when it's time, it's time. A lot of fans kind of think that it was going to happen soon. But then unlike Kobe, we don't get like the whole farewell tour. We don't get to say goodbye to him. He doesn't get to go city to city and have everybody just cheer for him and enjoy him one last time, but that's okay. So that's what he has decided. And it's going to be different. The league is going to be different now that a lot of these guys are retiring, and we're going to see the faces of the NBA changing. The style of the NBA is changing. It's kind of funny because now that he has announced that his retirement, a lot of players are coming out, to show their respect and to say, to thank him for because he's also been a example for a lot of players that are playing now. Like I said, since we've grown up watching him, a lot of players now, that even some that have had the opportunity to play with him or play against him, are now thanking him for all that he has shown them and taught them when it comes to the game of basketball. Last week, we did talk about these super teams forming, and we talked about how nowadays it seems like players are quick to jump ship and quick to join a super team, whereas before, players stuck it out. Players like Tim Duncan would stick it out, and a lot of them would spend their entire careers with a team. But then that draws me back to the fact that, one, Tim Duncan with the Spurs is a 5-time champion. So there's no reason really for him to leave, because and they're consistently getting to, they've had winning seasons. So one, there's no reason to leave when you have a good relationship with the coach, your team is doing well, your contracts are, good, and you're making a lot of money, you're the face of a franchise. And so there really was no need for him to leave. And so I don't think that, he's kind of like, in those particular cases, like, why would he leave when he's being so successful? But then also Jason Kidd has come out and announced, not announced, but he has said that he regrets not signing with the Spurs in 2003 when he was a free agent, and that he actually met with Tim Duncan, had verbally committed to the Spurs, and he was saying that he actually regrets that now, because he potentially could have had more championships if he would have went to the Spurs. And so that's what I was talking about last week, is that there are players that, and Jason Kidd does have a ring with Dallas, he does, but it's one of those things where that's exactly what I was talking about, that there's players that have done well in their careers, and I would say that they have had successful careers, but there's still that regret, or those what if those things that they go through when it comes to what would have happened or what could have been differently if I did switch teams, if I had moved earlier, if I had decided to, if they're a free agent, they're allowed to switch teams. So I just thought that was really interesting because that was something that I had mentioned before, that they're just, whether they want to admit it or not, Jason Kidd, he just came out right and said it, which I thought was like really cool because, growing up, I respect Jason Kidd too. So he has said that he too has thought about what ifs and what could have been and what they could have done differently. What he could have done differently in his career that could have set him up to be in a better position for more championships. And speaking of switching around and leaving a team, Al Horford has come out. He had an interview, and in his interview, he has discussed why he left the Hawks and has decided to go with the Celtics. And there was some speculation that, he wasn't happy about Dwight Howard coming to the Hawks and things like that. But in the interview, he was saying that it had nothing to do with Dwight, but that it had to do with the fact that he has been doing well with the Hawks, and the Hawks haven't been terrible with him, and that he was happy playing for the Hawks and everything, but that he feels that with the Celtics, he has a better chance of getting farther in the postseason and perhaps winning a championship with them. So again, these are players that are deciding to make career switches for the best of their career because there's certain goals that they have for themselves. And so I don't take it back last week, what I said about being excited about these super teams and not having a problem with these players moving during free agency or whatever to get on a better team and to heighten their chances of going deep in the postseason, because that's what you're supposed to do. The whole point of playing is to win championships, so I don't see why you wouldn't. But anyway, so we're gonna go on a quick break. I'm your host, Pauline, and this is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. This is Pauline. And before the break, I was wrapping up about Tim Duncan's retirement. I think it's going to be a different transition for the league as a whole, especially the Spurs, without having him in the middle. He's been like a fixture in the NBA. He's been something that's been so consistent. And I know that a lot of people say that, but it's true. He's been consistent. He's been faithful to his team. He's been successful with his team. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the Spurs adjust with that and how even he adjusts to retirement after basketball. I don't know. I don't really see him being an analyst or anything like that. He just doesn't strike me as somebody who would go into TV. I don't know. I just feel like he's one of those guys that may just retire and just enjoy retirement life and just enjoy his family, and just every once in a while we might see him around at a game and things like that. Maybe he might stay somehow involved with the Spurs organization. That wouldn't surprise me in some capacity, some way, I'm sure, because I know he has really good relationships there, so I don't see why he wouldn't want to keep a working relationship with the Spurs organization. But I just don't really see him, I don't really see him in the spotlight doing television or doing anything like that. I don't know. I just feel like he's going not to fade into darkness, but just not fade into darkness or anything like that, but just enjoy a nice, quiet life. And just when he decides to come out, he's going to come out and, be about, and we're going to make a big fuss about it because we haven't seen him, a couple seasons or two. We're going to be like, oh, there he is. is, and things like that. So I just think he's going to really enjoy retirement. And speaking of retirement, another guy that just retired, of course, everybody knows, is Kobe Bryant. And he just announced that he is actually expecting another child. So he's going to be busy on daddy duties. It is another daughter. So he has just announced that they're expecting. And honestly, he has a lot of daughters. This will be his third. I would be too nervous to have a son because I feel with these superstars, that's a lot of pressure. If I was Kobe's son, I don't know. I think I would have to play a different sport because if you are Kobe Bryant's son, we're going to expect you to be amazing at basketball, better than your father because you have Kobe Bryant teaching you the game of basketball. So I don't know. I just feel like that's a lot of pressure. So congratulations to him and his family. I know that that's going to be an exciting time and it'll be nice. I think his other daughters are really young. So he's retired at a great time so that he can spend a lot of time with them and raise them and just be really involved with them. In other news around the league, speaking of contracts and things like that, Isaiah Thomas has been, last week we talked about this new salary cap and some of the loopholes that I don't think that the NBA, or maybe they did consider, or maybe they just didn't care, some of the loopholes with the new salary contract. And one guy that is kind of feeling the burn right now is Isaiah Thomas. So he has, he's been consistently getting better. He played for the Kings, so of course I love him. And he did very well with the Kings and things like that. But he has continued to grow in his game and has continued to be consistent with his game. However, he's feeling a little slighted right now because he is now, with all these big contracts going out to guys that he feels are less, and when it comes to their athletic abilities and what they bring to certain teams, he feels like he's not getting paid his worth anymore. And so that's what I was kind of hinting on last week in the podcast, was that when it's time for some of these other guys who are in contracts right now, and when it's time for their contract renewals and things like that, there may not be enough money left on the teams that they're on or teams that they would want to move to because they are giving so much money away now. This free agency time and next year's free agency time, there are going to be some guys that will be able to, their contracts will end after the end of this season and then they will be free agents next season. So they could potentially cash out. But then a guy like Isaiah Thomas, who has a little bit more time on his contract, may be behind that curve, that money cash out curve. And so he was saying in an interview that he wants the Celtics to bring out the Brinks trucks when it comes to his contract. Like, he does not want them holding back at all. But then on the flip side of all of that, he's going to be a lot older. He's going to be I believe 29 by the time his contract is up for renewal and things like that. He's only 5'9", which is nothing. I'm not taking anything away from him. And, he's a great player and things like that, but he's going to be a little bit on the older side. I don't know how much he's going to be able to demand and how much teams are going to be willing to dish out for him. So, but that's what I was talking about, was that there's going to be some players that are going to be high caliber players in these next few seasons that are going to be demanding more money because they're seeing all these other players getting money these next 2 years, and there just may not be money for them. It's not that organizations don't want to give them more money. There just might not be any more money left. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see in these next few seasons what's going to happen with that, and see how, these organizations are going to adjust and figure out different things that they can do for some of these players. And it's going to be interesting to see how much players are going to start demanding now. High caliber players, mid caliber players, just to see, because now everybody's thinking that they deserve money. So, but these big time contracts, this is going to be really interesting to see how that is going to play out, and see how that's going to be these next few seasons. So I'm kind of anxious to see how that's going to go. In other news, the summer league has been going on these last couple of weeks, and the Vegas tournament is rounding out. They've already had 1 week of play, and then we're going into basically like the championship bracket of the tournament. And so it's been released how the brackets are going to be. The Raptors are seeded number 1, Bulls at number 2, and the Lakers at number 3. And the Lakers have been playing really well. I had the opportunity to go watch some of the games in Vegas this past weekend and to see some of those exciting games. It's been really fun watching these games. I got to see the Lakers play on Saturday evening, and that was really cool when D'Angelo hit that three. You know, it's just been a lot of fun. It seems like a lot of these games are going into overtime. It seems like a lot of these games are going to, you know, those last shots, which just makes it exciting. And it was kind of funny to me because for that game, it was the Sixers and the Lakers. So we have the number 1 pick in Ben and the number 2 pick in Brandon playing against each other. And this is one of the first times that that's ever happened before in the summer league. So that was really cool. And I expected there to be a lot of fans just for that simple reason. But it's so funny because, okay, Vegas is not that far from LA, right? So of course, there's a lot of Laker fans that traveled to Vegas for the summer league for these games. But I promise you, so I got to the game at the end of the first quarter. The entire Thomas and Mack Center was, I promise you, filled up. I had to sit at the top, like I want to say like 5 rows down from the very last row in the top section. So I was up really high for that game. And during the game, it was just exciting. And of course, you know, the summer league, it's really affordable. I think it's a great idea for parents when they want to take out their kids and things like that. Parking is free. The food isn't that expensive. If you buy your tickets in advance, I think it was like, what, $25, something like that. So it's really affordable to go see these players and to see some of the draft picks, you know, and things like that. And then they have like autograph signings and picture ops. So it's a lot of fun, especially if you have kids and things like that, or even for, you know, fans. I had a great time, and I'm not a kid, and I had an exciting time. But anyway, so at the end of the game, I promise you, the Laker fans were acting like they had just won an NBA title. Like, fans were going crazy. And I mean, it was great. It was a game winner, but it was just so funny to see because the entire stadium went in an uproar when D'Angelo hit that three. So that was a lot of fun. It was fun to see. It was fun to enjoy. I know all those fans are excited. It was a lot of fun. You know, you take wins where you can get them. And so it's going to be exciting to see how D'Angelo continues to progress. And I did get to see Brandon Ingram, okay, so I did speak about him, I want to say a few episodes ago. I want to say episode 3. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me. But I was talking about how he is really thin. He needs to gain weight. And there's been speculation and talk about his weight ever since, you know, the draft and all that. I got to see him. He walked past me and things like that. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but he's really thin, like really, really thin. A lot thinner than he looks on TV. I know TV and pictures add 10 pounds, but he's really thin. But I mean, he's been playing really strong, so it hasn't, you know, held him back thus far. And I'm sure he's going to continually get bigger and try his best. As long as, I mean, if you're a strong player, that's fine too. But wow, I was really, he was a lot thinner than I expected, but you know, whatever. He's doing well also. He's been playing really strong. So, and the Lakers have been doing well. So that's cool. We can start play, I believe, tomorrow with the brackets and for the tournament. So the tournament is going to be through that with the championship game on Monday. So that's going to be a lot of excitement. I think this weekend is going to be a lot of fun to watch some of these players, like teams and their fans. It's just fun to watch any kind of basketball, but it's really nice to see some of these young guys perform. When we come back, we're going to discuss Kris Dunn. He did suffer a concussion this past week in the summer league, which was really disappointing. And I still want to talk about Steph Curry's basketball camp over the 4th of July weekend. There was a lot of talk, and I have my 2 cents about that, and as well as the WNBA and what's going on in that league as well. So we're going to cut it to a break, and I'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back. This is the Golden State Media Concepts basketball podcast. I'm Pauline, and before the break, I mentioned a little bit that Kris Dunn has suffered a concussion. He suffered his concussion against the Cavaliers this summer league in Vegas. So he has been, of course, on the NBA's watch with the concussion. So he, as of now, it hasn't been really announced when he's going to be able to return. Every player is different. There's a lot of different protocol that they have to go through before they are cleared to play again. So hopefully he recovers quickly, but they don't rush it. Of course, like I said, there's a lot that they have to go through in order to be cleared to play again. So they normally don't rush these things anymore just for player safety, which is really disappointing. I was really sad for him when that happened, because he's been having a really good summer league. He's been playing really well this summer, and it's been exciting. He's been, really proving himself. So I was really excited to see him continue that throughout these next few games. So I hope that all is well with him and that a speedy recovery and everything is okay with that. Before the break, I also mentioned, so Stephen Curry, we all know who he is. He's a great guy and all that. And everybody knows, by now, you guys know that I really like him. He's really disappointed me this past week, because there's been a lot of talk about his sports camp that he had, his basketball camp. And his basketball camp was held over the 4th of July weekend, which when you're traveling during 4th of July weekend, no matter where you're going, it's going to be expensive. Traveling to Hawaii in general is expensive. And Mr. Curry had his basketball camp in Hawaii, which is great. You can have it anywhere that you want to go. And my mom grew up in Hawaii, so I love Hawaii as well. My grandmother still lives there. But his camp, okay, so Stephen Curry's camp was basically $2,500 for the overnight camp per player, so per camper, and there was, I believe, like 200 slots available, and so that's for overnight campers. And then if you were like an extended day camper, like where you commute to and from the basketball camp, you don't stay overnight, so there's no need for you to have like a dorm arrangement or anything, then your cost is, you get to save a lot of money. You're only gonna pay $2,000 for your camper to go to this camp. So like the camp is open to ages 9 through 16, I believe it was. I have a really big problem with this. So one, like I was saying, is that this camp is to give back to the community, to give back to these players, to pour into these players. Much is expected from those, much is given. Now, he has this camp, and honestly, you can do whatever you want when it's your camp. Last year, 2015, his camp sold out in a minute. So clearly there are parents willing to pay this amount of money because they feel like this is the best for their child, which is great. And I respect that too. I'm sure for some of these families, that was a big sacrifice. But the thing is, what my problem is with the Stephen Curry camp and these prices is the fact that, one, if there's no 2 or more player discount, so like if you and your brother want to go, your parents are going to have to pay almost basically $5,000 just for the camp. If you're going to spend the night, you and your brother are going to spend the night, or you and your sister. It was open to boys and girls. So if my sibling and I want to go, my parents are going to have to fork over minimum $5,000, but there's no guarantee that the both of you are going to get into the camp. So mom and dad have to both log on. And so now the camp registration went on sale, opened up in February. So first off, by the time we're hearing about this, it's already been, over and done with as far as registering for the camp. But both parents need to log on and try to get a spot and pay for your spot in potentially a minute, because last year the camp sold out in a minute. So you're frantically trying, you're on your phone, you're on the different browsers on your laptop and everything, trying to get a spot saved. But imagine if only one parent gets through, because, servers crash, things go slow, people all around the world are trying to go to this camp. So there's no discounts if there's 2 or more. Also, if you want to cancel because something happened, like say your kid breaks his arm, so you have only until April 1st to cancel. You have to pay a $250 cancellation fee. But after April 1st, if you cancel, there's no refund at all. So, kids do what kids do. And so you're registering in February. The camp's not till July. You have until April 1st to make sure that your kid doesn't be a kid and hurt himself, or else you're just not going to get your money back. And it just bothers me because guys like Steph, now, Stephen Curry, it was guaranteed that he was going to be there for 3 of the 4 days, so that's really good. He's also going to be, having some workshops with the kids. He's going to have some photo and autograph opportunities, so that's really cool. And they were going to get a lot of things as far as, backpacks. I'm sure they were given, things like that to take home, memorabilia and things like that to take home with them to remember camp, like their certificate. And camps are always a lot of fun. I loved going to camp growing up, basketball camp, all types of sports camps growing up. But this fee doesn't include airfare, so we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get there. There's no transportation for the campers. There's no accommodations for the campers unless they're staying overnight. Then they will stay in the dorms in Hawaii. And so I just felt that it was asking a lot. And of course, parents are going to do what they can and do their best for their kids. But what kind of irritated me is when Stephen Curry said, oh, if you can't afford it, well, in a way, he was really vague, but I just thought it was kind of rude. He posted on Instagram a flyer for his brother Seth Curry's basketball camp in LA, in the LA area, which is, I believe, was $200 per camper, so significantly less. He was saying if you want to go to a camp back in California, this one's cheaper. You can go check out my brother's camp. He's a great player also. So I don't know. It just kind of seems like he brushed it off. He didn't really care because, he's still getting paid. But my only thing with this is that, one, Damian Lillard, he has a camp, and his camp, I believe, runs for $250. But if you can't afford it, there are circumstances where he will actually sponsor your child and pay for it so that they can go to camp because he doesn't want people to miss out on it. And I'm sure with a lot of these other camps that players have, there are ways for some of these kids, if you just cannot afford it, but still have that drive, then it's worth it, to give back to them. And there's a lot of athletes that are superstar athletes in all sports that have free clinics and free camps, and things like that, where they run and they sponsor the entire week or they sponsor the entire weekend and kids don't have to pay. So I don't know. It just kind of really bothered me. It just felt like, these people are getting taken advantage of, but I'm sure that the kids, when they came back, had a great experience. I'm sure he is not planning on changing anything when it comes to the fees anytime soon. And I know that you have to pay the staff. There's trainers on staff. There's coaches on staff. There's a lot of people that you have to pay in order to have these camps run and to run these camps. I helped with a sports camp at my university, so I get it. There's a lot of fees and things involved, insurance and all that involves putting on a camp for children, especially for children. But I don't know. I just feel like $2,500 is just a lot to ask babysitting some kids. I don't know. So that's my take on that. My kids in the future, when I have kids, will not be attending a camp that's cost over $2,000. I don't care who it's for. You're just not going to do that. I don't care whether I can afford it or not. It's the principle. You're just not going to do that. But anyway, so that's my thing on Steph Curry and his basketball camp. I'm sure it was very successful. Like I said, I'm sure all the kids had a great time. It's a once, definitely for me, it would have been a once in a lifetime ever, because I'm not going to be, I wouldn't have been able to ask for a Christmas present for years. I don't know. So that's that for my little rant on Stephen Curry. But in the WNBA, there's been a lot happening in the WNBA as well. It's their 20th season. So they've been having a lot of excitement too in the WNBA. One thing that's been happening, because of the way that the WNBA is set up, there's not a lot of triple doubles that happen. It just doesn't happen as often. It's fine. It's really not that big of a deal. However, when it does happen, it is a big deal for the players that get it because it's not so often that it happens. So over this last week, Brittney Griner and Angel McCoughtry both were said to have achieved this mark. So both of them were said to have had triple doubles in their past games. But it's really sucky because, in everything there's errors, like people have errors and things like that. And there's times when things are announced and then it's revoked. And so these two players have had those triple doubles from this past week revoked. So there was a review, like a statistical review after the games and things like that. And so the WNBA has announced that Angel's game on Friday, where she had 27-10 rebounds and 10 assists in an overtime win over Dallas. That was taken aback because one of her assists was taken away. So she was 27-10 and 9. It was determined. And then Brittney Griner, she was said to have 27 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 blocks, which, that's a pretty big deal. But after the review of her statistics, it was announced that she was minus 2 of those blocks. So 27, 10, and 8. So I don't know. It's just sucky because you get it and then they take it back. And so and you're so close. But of course you want to have everything accurate. Everything has to be accurate in all statistics, in all portions of the game and in the league, both in the NBA and the WNBA. So I get it, but it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, you're just so close, So that's what has been happening in the WNBA this past week. The Seattle Storm are also going to retire Lauren Jackson's number this Friday. She played 12 seasons with the Storm and helped them win 2 titles, both in 2004 and also in 2010. Most recently, she had over 6,000 career points and is currently ranked 7th in league history with those points, 6,007. So she's going to be retiring her jersey. They're going to be honoring her Friday, which is really nice. There's been a lot of change within the WNBA as well. A lot of these players that have been playing, some of these players have been playing the most of the WNBA's existence. So a lot of those players are also retiring. So it's going to be interesting. These, both in the WNBA and in the NBA, a lot of these players that we've grown up watching, especially my generation has grown up watching and admiring, are now getting to that point where they're retiring. And so it's just going to be a lot of changes on both aspects of the game in both leagues. So that's going to be the wrap up for today's episode. You have been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Pauline. And like I said, you can listen to any previous episodes on basketball. The network has a lot of other podcasts that you may be interested in. You can listen to us, download us at gsmcpodcast.com. You can also tweet me at gsmc_basketball. I'm on Twitter. You can also download me on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. So I hope everybody has a good week. We're going to come back here once again next week, and I'm going to have more to talk to you about on the game of hoops. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.